Hello and welcome to Morbid Movies, the podcast where we discuss movies that appeal to the strange and unusual. I'm your host, Mary, and with me are my co-hosts who have called a temporary truce in their epic final battle to discuss today's film. All right, Dom and Jim, what are we watching today?
Thank you for that great intro. Which one would be Freddy and which one would be Jason? I feel like Jim has the cycle. Jim's always been like super clever and he's way smarter than me, but he's also way fitter. So I was gonna call him Freddy, but then who's more attractive out of Freddy versus Jason? You know? This is a big existential question that could take the whole of the podcast. I'm gonna say that Jim is Freddy and I'm Jason. I think
I think
that's
it's I think it's
one.
actually the other way around because you're the talker.
Well, yeah, maybe you're right. Let's open that up to the audience because I'm actually going to ask the question at the end, who won, because it's open to interpretation. But yes, Freddy versus Jason. I'm Dom. Jim, how are you? You were not hopeful about this film. You did not want to do it.
Yeah, so like I knew going in that this was not going to be a good movie. So there was a lot that could forgive in this, but what I couldn't look past was just how unimaginative the violence is. These are two franchises that built themselves on killing teenagers, Freddy in very creative ways and Jason with his brutality. And I don't feel like outside of one, which, I'll mention later, we got much of that. It was just really quick to the point deaths. People being slashed with machetes or, killed off screen or just thrown against things really hard. And it was just disappointing because I could not enjoy just a lot of the murder in this movie.
Yeah. I feel like there was a copious amounts of murder, as is what is expected. But you and I have very different tastes because I kind of loved it all. I was like, they've packed so much ridiculous violence in this film. Like this is why I think it's good to do, because you guys are looking at it from a filmic standpoint, and I'm just like, look at all the gore. Oh wait, there's some new metal. Oh, look at it. It's so noisy and violent and raw. Anyway, Mary, how did you feel about it all?
I didn't go in with high hopes, so I think that kind of helped like keep me from being too disappointed. I think I was roughly on track in my expectations. I also did notice the same thing that I felt like with the exception of I think the one scene that Jim also referenced, most of the most creative death scenes were just flashbacks to old Nightmare on Elm Street
Mhm.
movies at the
Yeah.
beginning of the film, and most of the rest of the violence was pretty like just unimaginative. So um I don't know. I also felt like the film wasn't, I know it's a horror comedy, but there wasn't a lot of tension built and it wasn't that scary. I kind of just felt like I was getting through it.
Yeah.
So, not the best one.
I don't think it was like, I feel like, again, I'm coming at this from a very different view, but it was supposed to be spectacle. It was supposed to be bombast. It was supposed to be ridiculous. Like, if you look at it as a ridiculous film, like, and I think that's what's reflected in the box office takings as well. We're all mindless drones who just want to see people get slashed up and have like a banging soundtrack on top of it. You know what I mean? We all just want mindless violence. That was back in 2003, so I don't think much has changed. God, that's a nihilistic view of the world. But anyway, yeah, I thought it was great, and I mean that's my first point. My first point is, compared to the budget, the box office, it made loads of money. I think it is because of those points we just said. I think we love ridiculous violence as a society. I think we love, I mean, it was very much a soundtrack of the time, that new metal, rap metal, hip hop stuff, which I loved, so I loved it. Um, and it was silly fun. I mean, it was never going to be the same quality psychologically, etc., than the originals because, well, the budget wasn't there. There was a lot of it took a long time to make. There was a lot of holes in it, which I know we'll talk about in terms of what the plot was going to be, what the script was going to be, who was going to be in it, in terms of well, the actors, but also the other horror icons were linked to it. So both of you then, do you understand why it made so much money? um you know Aside from your own filmic interest, because you're looking at it as a critic, effectively that's what we are as a channel. But it made a lot of money and I can totally see why.
I mean, I can see why it made money, and the horror genre is really persistent in terms of, horror movies can consistently make money as long as they're made on a low enough budget. It does tune out a fair amount of the general audience, but if these movies, the originals were made for like, three, four, $5 million, and then they bring in 30, that's a good return on investment. Um, but yeah, I mean, like you said, I think people did want to go to this movie seeing spectacle. I didn't get the kind of spectacle that I wanted, but I can see how there is an appetite for this movie.
Yeah, but what did you want though? That's the point. Like
I mean,
whatever.
creative kills. Like, I agree with Mary that the beginning montage of Freddy Krueger's kills was much more interesting than anything else in this movie. I want to see the geyser of blood shooting out of the bed. I want to see the guy's veins ripped out and he's dancing around like a marionette, or just, like Jason's brutal kills where he just, cuts people in half, or stabs them and just I don't even know what he did. Eviscerates them, guts fall out, things like that. Like the some of the Friday the 13th movies were pushing an X rating back in the day, and this is kind of a tame movie, violence wise, I think.
Yeah, I can definitely understand why this film made money. And I remember in the lead up to this film coming out, there was a lot of hype around it. At that time, you didn't really have as many crossover films happening in general. This kind of kicked off a trend again because this is, pre Marvel and DC universe, constant crossover stuff. But and these are two huge horror franchises that have very loyal fan bases, so it feels like it would be unlikely for a film like this to flop, especially since like it was a discussion in horror circles for like what about 2 decades by the time this came out, like Freddy versus Jason, who would win. So I think that there was a lot of interest in the lead up to this film, and a lot of those, fans of Freddy Krueger and Jason are probably more likely to forgive that. I'm full disclosure not a slasher film person, so I don't have that kind of loyalty to the characters. Um, I also feel like, in the film's execution, because both franchises are so big, I think that weighs down the film because they are trying to fit a lot of Freddy and Jason backstory and establish the teenagers, and there's just not enough time for everything, and the battle between Freddy and Jason feels very short as a result, because I only feels like I think it was like maybe the last half hour or so of the film as a result of that. So it
Yeah.
just, I think it's a hard film to write as well.
Yeah, yeah. Again, it was in development hell for a long time, as you mentioned. We'll talk about again some of the other sort of dream casting that was supposed to happen in there. It was Robert Englund's last turn as Freddy. He was about 55 at the time when this came out, and he obviously passed the baton over to it was 2010, I think. I'll edit this
Jackie
bit out.
O'Haley.
Jackie, there you go. Jackie L. Haley did the 2010 version, which was panned. Unfortunately, I do like Jackie L. Haley as a performer, but yeah. So I think a lot of people got excited because it was Freddie. It was Robert Englund's last turn. Of course, there were some other casting issues which you've highlighted in your notes, Mary. Ken Kirzinger got the role. He's a stunt guy, a very talented stunt guy over many, many years. Got the role over the original Jason. And that was Kane Hodder. That's the name I'm looking for. So Kane Hodder was had been Jason for so long, and Kane Hodder was dropped in favor of Ken Kirzinger because I believe Ken was a little bit taller, a few inches taller, and I believe that caused a problem. Since you're not a slasher fan, what did you think of the casting here and the decisions to replace the original Jason or the long-standing Jason and have Robert Englund in his final role here as Freddy?
Yeah, I think Robert Englund. I think that he played Freddy so many times. I don't really have any particular feedback on that. He just did what he did. In terms of like, I understand the casting choice in terms of they wanted a larger Jason so that he would tower over Robert Englund more, because there's like an almost foot difference in height between the two actors. So it does create that contrast. I haven't really watched a lot of Friday the 13th films, so it's hard for me to make that comparison casting wise, because to my mind he doesn't really have lines. He just kind of hulks menacingly and kills teenagers, so it's a little harder for me to make that determination. I kind of feel like in a lot of cases, like with this film, I think that it's less about the casting and more about the writing with a lot of the performances in this too. Is like especially like Catherine Isabel, who plays Gibb in this film, can act competently, but like her character in this film is not particularly interesting and kind of just exists to be a punching bag until her murder scene happens. So that's less her fault and more just the writing's very flat for these teenagers.
Yeah, yeah. Jim, do you have anything to add to that from a casting standpoint? I mean, also as a maybe I'll leave this one to the end, but would you have done anything different in your if you had the reins here, just commenting on Mary's point about the writing, would you have done anything different? Would you have done anything different casting wise here?
Well, I mean, I think when it comes to the casting, I would have preferred a more emotional Jason like Kane Hodder
Mm.
brings to the role. I think when Jason's dispassionate, which happens a lot of the time, I think he tends to be a knockoff of Michael Myers, because Halloween came first. Halloween, I think, is a significantly better movie than any Friday the 13th. But Jason, without a personality, seems to be a little bit of a clone of Michael Myers. But when you give him that anger, then suddenly you're dealing with something different. That anger over whether people are invading his territory at the lake or whether he's mad over his mother's death or what have you. It gives him something that differentiates him.
Yeah, yeah, and you can certainly there was a lot of I was reading online all the points about this film, critics on, various reviews. People do say Kane Hodder did bring an extra level of rage with his movements and the like certain mannerisms like a head tilt or a move of the head that people could see because he was a very good, Kane Hodder is a very celebrated actor in the role of Jason. So good points there. I look at it, and this is just me being critical of my own taste as a watching films. I looked at it from a purely like look at these two behemoths just cracking each other and attacking each other and slashing people, but actually there's a dedicated fan base out there, and I can see from you guys and your own taste, the writing severely lacked, and there was better casting choices to be made here. That certainly seems to be the sort of overriding view. Mary, any kind of major facts that you uncovered? There was a particularly, one of note that I wanted to raise, that there was a fight between the director Ronnie Yu and Catherine Isabel, who played Gibb. And I thought that was interesting because I think we all discussed, the sort of problematic sets. Of course, we're going to talk about the seemingly consistent theme of fire and flames and burning and melting stuff in a minute. But certainly, I wanted you to expand on that fact because I do think it's worth mentioning that, I would hope times have changed now, but this seems particularly problematic from the director to one of the talents here.
Yeah, so one of the things I found in my research is that Catherine Isabel, who played Gibb and the director Ronnie Yu did not get along well during filming, and this seems to have stemmed from Isabel having signed a contract that had a strict no nudity clause in it, and the director Yu was trying to pressure her into doing that nude shower scene that's in the film, which she absolutely did not want to do. And ultimately, they settled on using a body double, which I think, for the purposes of the film works fine, but it's definitely problematic to my mind to have someone come in with an expectation that they've got this contract, it's understood they're not going to do this type of scene, and then just get pressured quite a bit into that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And I'm glad that she, stuck to her guns and said no.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. And one of the other facts I want to bring in, is again seems to be a lot of problematic issues on the set with regards to fire, costumes catching fire. I believe Robert Englund's makeup was melting at one point. Can you go into a bit more detail about again a different side of the word and the term problematic? Of course, very different points, but still, this seems like a very uncomfortable set for everybody involved. Mary, can you tell us a bit more about the a lot of the melting and burning that took place?
right, yeah, I mean, definitely. So there's a few different incidents. Or Robert Englund stated that he couldn't tell how hot the fire was because of the heavy makeup he had on, but when it was time for removal, he found that some of it had bonded to his face, which sounds uncomfortable. And there was also a scene in the asylum where Ken Kirzinger, who plays Jason, was accidentally lit on fire by sparks. And fortunately, he's an experienced stuntman, so he waited calmly for the crew to put him out with extinguishers. And there were also a couple of stunt performers who had their wigs melted by the high heat of the fire on the set as well. So it sounds like there was a lot of safety issues surrounding that. Kind of on a similar note, there is a scene where you see Jason sinking into the water, which was apparently very uncomfortable as well because the actor had to keep his eyes open in a very chlorinated water that had quite a bit of debris in it, and it caused some eye irritation for him. So it sounds like it was just a kind of dangerous and uncomfortable film to be on overall.
It does sound challenging. We'll move on to the sequels that were, people were talking about Pinhead, people were talking about Ash, and I believe there was a comic book that got made. In fact, I think I may have read it back in the day. When when you watch this, did you immediately think, wow, I want to see a sequel with either Ash from the Evil Dead or Pinhead in from Hellraiser? Was that something that you would have gotten excited about, both of you?
I kind of feel like I'm a little bit relieved that they didn't introduce Ash into this because I am pretty fond of the Evil Dead films as far as it goes, and with how clunky this film ended up being, I don't know that I would have been into that. I'm a little less attached to Hellraiser because those films just kind of baffle me, if I'm being honest. But I don't know. It just, at a certain point, it kind of feels like it would be a little bit ridiculous to keep trying to cross universes over. So I think it's probably for the best that they scrapped some of that.
Yeah. Jim, would you have enjoyed something like that? Because I think a lot of more people talk about Ash versus Jason versus Freddy than they do Pinhead versus Jason versus Freddy. But is there any one of those that would have appealed to you, do you think?
In general, no. I agree a lot with what Mary said in terms of the crossover with Ash. And going back to what she said earlier, this movie really is tying itself in knots to try to fit these two together. And then you try to fit Ash in on top of that, and it starts to get absurd with, this is a really fast movie for 90 minutes. There's just so much going on. On the one hand, I do want to say, Bruce Campbell will make anything better. But, then are you also getting the Raimis on board to write for him? Are you just cramming him in this? And I don't think that it would really work.
Yeah.
When it comes to Pinhead, I'm actually a big fan of the first two movies. The franchise gets really bad really fast after that. Um, but it also, I don't think it would work. Like, how do you even torture Jason? Does he feel anything? And yeah, I don't even see why Pinhead would bother with them.
Yeah, no, but it makes sense. I mean, the idea, I believe, was that he was going to separate them or be some kind of referee. But then again, that feels beneath the character of Pinhead, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they packed so much into this film and too much in, and it would have benefited from more exposition, which I believe people can get in the comic books. Ash versus Jason versus Freddy. There's a little bit more exposition into both characters in those, and it's a very well received comic book, which I'll make sure to put a reference to in the edit so people can check that out because it does exist. One of the facts I wanted to bring up, just because obviously our last episode was Frankenstein, they actually had Guillermo del Toro considered, at least alongside Rob Zombie, to do this film. I would have loved to have seen a Guillermo del Toro or Rob Zombie interpretation, Peter Jackson as well. I wonder what a Guillermo del Toro version of this would have looked like, guys. Is that something you would have been? Would it have made you more interested if del Toro had done this? Do you think?
Del Toro probably would have had like a little bit more atmosphere and style to it, but I have trouble picturing that. I kind of feel like Rob Zombie would have been a better fit for this particular film, from what I've seen of his work, as far as that goes, because I think he does better with that kind of campy, gory type of horror.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what could have been. I think there's a lot of that. There's a lot of potential to this film that perhaps wasn't realized. Maybe we'll see something way down the line that I won't make you guys cover for this podcast. I just want to shout out my worst performer in this, who is of course a very credible musician, Kelly Rowland from Destiny's Child. When I remember seeing this as a kid, actually because I actually listened to a lot of Destiny's Child back in the day, believe it or not. Yeah, I was the acting in this film, in my view, was probably some of the worst acting I've seen, certainly since we've been doing this podcast. I don't know about you guys. It sounds like you've got a similar thought to me on this one. What did you guys think? We normally do best actor, and we will go to that. I will make you find a best actor here. But worst actor for me is Kelly Rowland in the role of Kia. You guys have any worst actors in this?
I mean, I agree with Kelly Rowland, but at the same time, I almost feel like we're picking on her because she's not a professional actor.
That's true.
Uh,
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, if someone called me up and said, "Hey, do you want however much it was, $200,000 to star in this movie?" I would say yes, and I would be terrible. So I can't really fault her.
Good point.
Uh,
Good point.
for me, I was really annoyed by Brendan Fletcher as Mark. Now, I don't know if anyone remembers the I had to look up the name of the character. These characters really weren't well defined. But he was the boyfriend's friend who was also in the mental institution, and he was just acting really over the top manic. Like if you just take a normal person and say, act like you're crazy, that's basically what you would get with his performance. And it was just kind of he was jumping to wild conclusions about what was going on. He was on point, but like, you know, it just yeah, he was just abrasive to me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's kind of brought it back, that performance. But then I think if you're gonna ham it up in any film, Jim, which is this is very over the top as it is, I think this is probably the one to do it, is it not? You know?
I mean, I can't argue with that. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna go over the top, you might as well in
Yeah,
this
you might
movie.
might as well in this one. Mary, do you have anything to add for your least favorite? That's what I probably should have said. With all respect to, of course, Kelly Rowland's incredible multi-million selling recording career. You probably should have said least favorite performer. So, yeah, what do you have a least favorite performer in this, Mary?
Because I feel like for the most part, all of the teenagers' characters were kind of poorly written. So it suffers from like they're not memorable. It's pretty flat.
Perhaps more challenging question because it is part of our podcast each time. Do you guys have a favorite performer in this? Or if you're going to struggle with that, favorite performer or favorite scene?
I mean, as far as favorite performer, I think I have to give it to Robert Englund because he kind of just came in and did his Freddy thing, and he knows how to do that pretty well. And he worked with it as best he could in this. And the clunkiness of the film is definitely not his fault. And in terms of favorite scene, it's a little harder, but probably that first Jason kill in the film, because like when it started out it felt a little standard, but then the like bed fold up caught me off guard, I have to admit.
Yeah, yeah, that is, yeah, definitely sticks in my mind. Jim, favorite performer or favorite scene?
Well, I'll give you both. For favorite performer, it's Robert Englund, but that kind of is by default, since no one else really seems to step up to the moment in this film. The problem with his performance, though, I generally like him as Freddy, but I prefer when he's a little bit more serious, a little bit more menacing, like in the first or third film. And here you kind of get him when he's becoming a little bit of a self-parody. And there's that tendency to play him up like more of a jokester. So
Yeah,
I think this one pushed it a little bit far. I think every other word out of his mouth was bitch. So he sounds like Scary Terry from Rick and
yeah,
Morty.
yeah,
So it's hard to take him seriously in this movie. I don't know if I was supposed to. Like you said, it was a horror comedy. I didn't think it was particularly funny or scary. So, um,
yeah,
but when it comes to favorite scene, again, like Mary said, it's that first kill where he kills Trey, because he just stabs him repeatedly. I think you saw some like viscera pulling out of him, like guts or something. He's twitching around, dying, and then he folds him up in the bed, and it's just such overkill that that's basically what I'm here for. And
yeah.
unfortunately, it set the tone early, and then it just kind of like disappointed after that. Like, you basically come in, you give us the best kill, and then after that, there's nothing.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. I do think that overkill and over the top is certainly the theme of this film. Um, okay, so this has been well debated in many, for 20 years, effectively. Obviously, the end spoilers for anybody who's not seen it includes a scene with Jason coming out of the lake, which is used in X-Men 2 as well. I found out that Jason comes out of the lake holding Freddy's head, and Freddy winks. The popular theory is that Freddy won. Where do you guys stand on this? Jim, you go first. Who won the fight?
I mean, I think it's actually pretty clear that Jason won. You know, Freddy killed one person in the movie. I think it was Mark was the only person he killed. He killed the main character, spoiler alert, he killed the main character's mother before the movie, so that's maybe two. Jason's just hacking and slashing through the whole thing. He kills like 20 people.
Yeah, but I mean, like between the two of them.
I mean, but yeah, I mean, doesn't Jason win just by virtue of him murdering people? He's happy. He's having a fun old time. But in terms of the fight, I mean, Jason decapitates Freddy and walks away fine with his head. So I think Jason won.
But Freddy winks, man. He winks. You know. So that implies that like Jason could be in Freddy's universe. He could be in hell. Jason, like Freddy, could be manipulating Jason to think that he won.
Okay, but if you look at this chronologically, there's no more Freddy movies. Jason X takes place after this, so Jason's still kicking. He's still murdering.
Fair enough. Good point. Yeah. Okay. You've just won the argument. Mary, do you have a contrary point, or do you agree with everything Jim said?
Agree to a certain degree. I think the wink kind of lines it up for the potential that they can keep going with the Freddy movies if they wanted to. And to a certain degree, it is kind of like, an unstoppable object and an immovable force issue. But when you're talking about in like the real world and not the dream plane, Freddy's powers are significantly more limited because he can't bend reality the way that he normally would. So I think Jason kind of has the home field advantage once they're, in the real world on planet Earth, since he's basically unkillable as far as it goes and can, just keep reducing Freddy to smaller and smaller pieces ultimately.
Doesn't Jason get blown up in Jason X, Jim?
I don't know. I didn't watch it.
It's been a while. I don't remember how it ends.
Yeah.
I just
Jason.
I mostly just remember him blowing up space stations and smashing people's faces into liquid nitrogen.
Yeah. No, I get that. Jason also drowned in that film, right? They had to save Jason. The teens had to save Jason in Freddy vs. Jason. So Jason drowned.
That was in Freddy's dream universe, not the real world, though. So I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Freddy's exploiting his ability to mess with the dream universe and re-drown child Jason.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, I think to be honest, I feel like, getting any more out of this would be like, I'm trying to think of some kind of horror metaphor, but I'll just go with ripping blood from a stone, ripping guts from a teenager. I think we've covered all of the major points here. Anything that you both would like to mention from the notes or from your own watching experience, positive or negative, that you'd like to bring before we finish up?
I think I'm good. I mean, there's only so much you can beat a dead horse criticizing this movie.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. Mary, anything else you'd like to add?
I just think it's a movie that just like suffers from not being able to establish a tone because it's really being crushed under its own weight. But yeah, we did it. We never have to talk about it again, so I'm good.
Yeah, we never have to talk about it again. Once again, I think just go and read the comic book, Jason versus Freddy versus Ash. It is meant to be very, very good. Cool. Merry Christmas. Jim, Merry Christmas. Yeah. It's been a pleasure doing this podcast. We've been doing this for a year, right? Near enough. We do this for a year.
Bit over a year, I think.
Bit over a year. Oh, it doesn't feel that long. It's just nice to hang out with you guys every month. Jim, it's been a pleasure having you more recently as well. Yeah. What are your New Year's resolutions? I hate that bollocks, but I'll ask you anyway. Are you excited for 2026?
No, I mean, if it's anything like 2025, I just do not want to deal with it.
Fair enough. Mary?
I'm just trying to get through it.
Fair enough. Okay, well, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everybody. Mary, we're back in January. So we'll be back right here on Morbid Movies with Dom, Mary, and Jim. What we'll be covering, because we've had a debate, haven't we, behind the scenes about what we do and which direction we take this podcast in the new year.
Yeah, so we decided to start, rotating who gets to pick, so we get to mutually inflict pain on each other. But next month is going to be Delicatessen. So I haven't seen that, so I'm excited because it looks like it's going to be interesting.
Cool, I am excited too. I have not seen it either, so let's push ourselves out of our comfort zone, everybody. Okay, where can everybody find us, Mary?
All right, so if you want to contact us, you can email us at morbidmoviespod@gmail.com. We're on Instagram at morbidmoviespodcast, on Twitter at morbidmoviespod, TikTok at morbid.movies.pod, and Blue Sky at morbidmovies. And you can message us there, leave a comment in our comments on YouTube or wherever if you want to request a certain film, and also just, like, subscribe, give us good ratings wherever you're seeing this. We appreciate it.
Yeah, right, Jim, what do we do? Every month, every day, every week of the year, we I was going to be like, I was like, does Jim actually know what I'm leading up to here? I'm leading up to the Keep It Spooky line, and I was like, Jim, what if Jim doesn't get it? What if Jim's like, what the fuck?
No.
Jim, I'm going to do it again. Jim, what do we do every week, every day, every month of the year?
Keep it spooky.
Awesome. Bye, everybody.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.